justice for all. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Bilbo.
Present.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Ms. Howe. Here. Mr. Morelli.
Present.
Mr. Perry.
Here.
Ms. Edmond. Here. Mr. Schnee.
Present.
Mr. Urban. Mr. Vogt.
Here.
Ms. Wakes. Present. Mr. McGinley.
Present.
10 present.
10 present. We have a quorum. We're going to begin tonight's meeting with a recognition and a proclamation. I'll take a moment and read it. Whereas Luzerne County Council and the citizens of Luzerne County believe that the greatest gift an individual can bestow on his or her community is a willingness to serve and place one's own needs second to the needs of others. Whereas the Greater Pittston Regional Ambulance Association, at its heart, is an independent, nonprofit volunteer organization that provides emergency medical services in the Greater Pittston area, including Pittston City, Jenkins Township, Yatesville, Exeter, Wyoming, and West Wyoming boroughs. Whereas the State Department of Health and Pennsylvania Emergency Health Services Council honored the Greater Pittston Regional Ambulance Team with an award for the Pennsylvania EMS Agency of the Year Award on September 5th of 2019. Now, therefore, we, Luzerne County Council, do hereby proclaim its gratitude and congratulations to all the members of the Greater Pittston Ambulance Association who embody civic duty, community pride for all the residents of Luzerne County. Congratulations. If someone from the Ambulance Association would come forward and accept this, please. Mr. Lombardo. Podium and say a few words.
Thank you, Chairman McGinley. On behalf of the Ambulance Association, there's several of us here with us. If they could stand, several of our members have come to join us tonight to accept this award. As I mentioned earlier in the month when we received this award, we certainly don't do this for the awards or for the recognition, but it's certainly nice to be recognized for our efforts. We have a very dedicated team who loves what we do, put our heart and soul into it, and we think that we provide a pretty good product to the Greater Pittston area, and we look forward to continuing to do that into the future. I'd like to thank Councilman Vogt for singling us out and giving us this recognition here before County Council, and also Mr. Bilbo, our Greater Pittston delegation, where we are so proudly serving, and wish everyone the best, and thank you again for this tremendous honor.
Thank you. Well, Ms. Lombardo, I think there's a lot of people who think that you guys are doing it very well, so congratulations again. Any additions or deletions from the voting session agenda? We have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Wakes, Ms. Seidman. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. We're down to public comment on voting session agenda items. Mr. Rabo.
Good evening. Good evening. On the agenda items this is for the public hearing, is it, or the voting?
Public
meeting?
hearing we had at 5:45, Mr. Rabo.
Okay, so it's the voting meeting. Sorry.
That's correct.
Bear with me.
Okay.
For the motion for the ordinance for the borrowing, as I stated during when the capital budget was presented, I am for the 911 upgrade. I just believe that there needed to be a little bit more cohesion in terms of the planning phases. With the consultant and the first responders, I think there should have been better coordination, in terms of what the first responders needed with the consulting firm. And I think that would have been better able to be as far as figuring out the number that's necessary, because I still think that the number's kind of a little low, because of the other counties that were involved in the 911 digital upgrade for their counties, respective counties. So I think that should have been a little bit more better coordinated. That's my only peeve with that. With regards to the voting machines for the
The voting
borrowing,
machines are not part of the voting agenda.
they're not, but they're part of the borrowing, aren't they?
They're part, the borrowing is part, but the voting machines themselves are not part
No,
of the voting agenda.
I'm speaking about the borrowing for the machines.
I thought you already spoke about the borrowing.
No, just in coordination with the 911. But the borrowing, the total borrowing is for the 911 upgrade and the voting machines, correct?
As proposed,
Okay, so that means that the voting machines are included in this borrowing, right? The money, the funding.
parts of the monies for funding.
Okay, so I'm going to just speak on the funding part for the machines. I believe that should be put off until next year, the beginning of next year, because of the fact that we could figure out, as far as a county and other counties that have the voting machines already, to see how they test out. That way, we can ascertain what machines are effective and which ones aren't. Because as I sent to the council in my emails, as far as what transpired in other states and other counties, I think that needs to be there needs to be caution here, and that's all I'm saying. I think that we could still make the move as far as the county can to purchase the machines, but it doesn't have to be a rush to purchase it. I think that the borrowing can be set aside for the machines at another point, if you need to talk to the bond counsel or to the bank if necessary. I don't think the machines need to be included with this borrowing. I think it should be separate from the 911. And
Thank you.
that's the only, and plus for number 2, just one sentence. I think that it should be the RACB grant and not the Keystone Community Grant that should be applied for, since the county already has $2.5 million awarded in the RACB grant for a project in Hazleton, the $2.5 million for the Altamont building. So I think that should be considered, but I'll mention that in my
Thank you.
end of the
Mr. Shiner?
Good evening. On the agenda tonight, item number 2, the request for the Keystone Communities Program grant. Is that an additional grant other than the $1 million that we've already received?
I would have to say that no, that's the one that was announced last week.
That's the same one?
Correct.
Okay. In light of the fact that we received $1 million already in a grant, why is the borrowing amount stated still at $34.7 million? Why don't we reduce that and then hopefully save on some interest? And how will that affect the interest in the borrowing through 2030?
I think we'll address that.
Before, when we talk about the borrowing ordinance, that will be addressed.
Through PFM.
Okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Griffith, you didn't indicate agenda item?
Yeah, I do have an agenda item.
Step to the podium, please.
Sure. I missed the public hearing because I was working on the sampling the voting machines, so I apologize for not making the public hearing. But on the borrowing part of it, as I stated at the last meeting at the college when we spoke about that before, is I think you really need to hold off on that and vote no on this ordinance and reintroduce it at another time. We don't have enough information on the voting machines and funding. We don't know if the state's going to give us any funding at all. It's an unfunded mandate, and I don't think this county, the taxpayer, should be paying for something that the governor passes as an executive order that says we're going to have voting machines. And from the sampling of the voting machines, they're not very accurate to start with, in my estimation. Some of the people can talk to that at a later date, maybe when we get to speak about voting machines. But there's some serious problems there that I don't feel that we should take the borrowing for until we get those problems addressed or at least aired out. The borrowing for the 911, that part of the funding, I don't think we have enough information from the municipalities on whether they're going to get enough radios or not. Are they going to get enough, or are they going to have to spend more money, and is that going to cost the taxpayers some more money on the municipal level for taxes that have to go up because they have to buy more portable radios or more mobile units. We don't know if they're getting the same amount of mobiles and portables that they currently have now. I don't believe they are. I think they're getting shorted on the portables. So if they're getting shorted on the portables, as Mr. Delaney said from the city of Wilkes-Barre, then they're going to have to spend the money to buy those portables, which means the taxpayers are going to get hit again. I think we need to do our due diligence and make sure that we have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted before we go out and spend $34 million of taxpayers' money in interest. My last question is, and I've asked this before of PFM and bond counsel, is what is the cost for PFM to do this, and what is the cost for the bond counsel? That goes into the total cost. And last time I asked that question, I never did get an answer of what the cost was for PFM for the last time we borrowed money. That question seemed to be alluded to. I never got an answer. So at some point when we're talking about the bond, I hope the gentleman from PFM will tell the council exactly how much the cost is that he's charging the county to draft this proposal, as well as bond counsel, how much we're paying them to do this bond as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else in the audience that has submitted a slip in regards to public comment for agenda items. Is there anyone at this time who would like to come to the podium? Seeing none, we're going to move on. Thank you. First on the agenda is the adoption of the motion to adopt the minutes from September 24th. We have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Vogt?
Second.
Mr. Perry? On the question?
I think some questions are raised in public, Mr. Chair, from the public are good ones.
About the minutes?
No, I'm not, I'm sorry, about the minutes? No.
Yeah,
about
that's where we're
tomorrow.
at. About the minutes?
I'll hold off on that, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All in favor of adopting the minutes as submitted, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard, motion carried. Moving down to the agenda item on the county manager, which is a motion to adopt the ordinance authorizing the incurrence of non-electoral indebtedness of the county of Luzerne, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania by issuance of a general obligation note, Series 2019, and a principal amount of $34,705,000 for and toward financing a capital improvement program. Do we have a motion?
Presented.
Mr. Sneed.
Second.
Mr. Bilbo. On the question, would PFM go to the podium, please?
Mr. Chair, obviously, this is something that we've been talking about for just over a year now, well, a couple of years actually, and we're at the point right now where we're ready to do the borrowing to move forward with a 911 project. I've asked Scott Shearer from PFM is here, who has a presentation to review with council if you would like. Obviously, he was at the last meeting as well, discussing our situation. We have our bond counsel sitting in front of us, Attorney George Magnata, who's made the trip up from Philadelphia. If you have any questions regarding the legality of the statute or anything we need to do with regard to the specific ordinance, as well as Fred Rosenkrantz is here from 911 if there's any technical questions that council may have.
Mr. Chair, the
All
floor
right.
is yours.
Great, thank you. Appreciate you having us come back again. So I'm just going to briefly walk through this handout. A lot of this is very similar to what I presented back at the community college a few weeks ago, but I figured it's good to get us all reacclimated again. So a lot of what I have in here is sort of the financial terms of what's in the ordinance that Mr. Magnata had put together. So real briefly on page 1, kind of the key features of this borrowing. So remember, there's two main components. There's the refunding component where we're looking at some existing debt and lowering the interest rate, and then there's the new money component that we'll get a little bit more into. So in letter A, as far as the refunding candidates, we're looking at 4 different bonds and note issues that are able to be refinanced, approximately $12 million worth of those bonds and notes. What we're basically looking to do is just replace the higher rates. Right now they range from about a 6 3/4 to an 8%, replacing those with today's lower rates that are available in the current market. The key thing that we've talked about in a lot of the transactions in the county is we are not extending the term of the debt. So where those notes where they end now, that's where they're going to continue to end. We are not extending it 1 year, 5 years, keeping it the same exact term for those refinancings. So that's the one main part of the transaction. In letter B, as far as the other component, we're looking to finance. Now, the project costs a little bit more, from my understanding, but we're looking to finance up to $19.7 million for the upgrades and improvements to the 911 system. I think the numbers that we talked about at the last meeting were closer to $20.7 million, but since that meeting, we have heard that the county has been awarded this grant, so that's obviously going to lower the amount that we're borrowing. And we'll talk about why our numbers are lower and why the ordinance remain the same. So what we're looking at the moment is 19.7 to fund the 911 system. And again, there's in little a, then the county has been approved for that $1 million grant as well. In letter C, right now our numbers do reflect 1.4 million of these monies to be used towards the voting machines. And again, it's our understanding that grants and other sources are still being considered to pay for the remaining amounts of those. The loan rate that we had mentioned before from Webster Bank, very low rate of a 2.174%. And another key feature, it is prepayable at any point in time. So again, basically with the new money component of this, we're looking to borrow $19.7 million for the 911 and $1.4 million for the voting machines, and then basically about $12 million for the refunding component. As far as the candidates, the refunding candidates, just a little bit more detail down below on page 1. Again, we talked about that at the last meeting, but it just gives you the 4 different respective note issues that we're talking about. That were 2 of them were issued in 2008, and the other 2 were issued in 2009. We're basically at the call dates for two of them, the 2 larger ones. The other 2 were callable last fall, basically around this time, but we decided to wait, just for economies of scale and doing all the transaction together to save the county on some financing costs, to do it all now, which proved to be a wise decision. If you do want to move forward, just rates have moved in the county's direction over that time that we've been planning for this. I don't know, well over a year, maybe 2 years or so, that we've been looking at various financing options for both the new money needs of the county as well as the refinancing. So on page 2, sort of what is the impact to the county by moving forward with the borrowing amounts that I just explained. So in the blue, in columns 1 and 6, that is the what the kind of the outcome after the refunding transaction, and we're assuming it closes around Thanksgiving time. We're assuming November 26th. You see the estimated savings in column 6, roughly a little over $3 million. Extremely efficient transaction. You see up top there, and again in column 1, as far as the savings. A lot of times when we gauge efficiency of refunding transactions, we look at the net savings and compare that to the amount of bonds or notes we're refinancing. A good rule of thumb is as long as you're saving 2 or 3%, that's a good transaction. This is 26%, so very good transaction for the county here. And again, basically $3 million, and that's net. So that's net of the issuance costs. That we'll get a little bit more into that through the numbers. And you see the way the savings are falling in place in column 6. As far as the new money component in column 2 in the purple and column 7, so the total amount of new money to pay for, again, both the $19.7 million for what's going to be financed for the 911, the $1.4 million that's being assumed for the voting machines plus issuance costs, gets us to $21,185,000, and you see the respective debt service in column 7, and then you see the net overall impact there in column 9 between what the county's current debt service is, which is in column 5, versus what the new proposed debt service is going to be after this transaction in column 8. Again, gets you to that net overall impact. So from a budget perspective, it's actually a reduction in 2020, and then a slight increase in 21 from the new debt service being put in place, and then see it level out in column 9 around $400,000 or so of increase out to where the larger payments are made when the existing debt starts to drop off. The schedule on page 3. So if you do decide to move forward with the numbers that we're reflecting in this handout this evening, and we move towards closing, this is assuming a $33.3 million transaction. Again, that covers the refunding as well as the new money and the various components I'd mentioned in there. So in column 2 are the principal paybacks due out through 2030 with the assumed interest rate in column 3 of the 2.174%. And you see on the next page, this is a breakdown of the sources and uses. So under uses, we start with the note proceeds, again, $33,305,000. We also are adding in the 911 grant as well that we just talked about of $1 million. So that gets us to total sources of $34.3 million and change. So that's the kind of the pot of money you're going to be starting with. And then under uses, project itself is about 20.7 million, so you're going to pay for that. The voting machines, again, we're saying 1.4 million is going to be paid from the financing. We have the amount required to call the old debt, about 12 million and change. See the legal fees and the financial advisor and bank fees broken out, all reduction from the county's last 2 different transactions that the fees have been reduced. And again, we're assuming November 26th as our settlement date. And again, the yield of the issue, locking in this money at a 2.17%. That's prepayable at any point in time. And so I know we did talk about, well, so let's go to page 7 then real briefly. So the schedule that's in the ordinance, the maximum schedule, is for $34.7 million. And that's the number that we had talked about at the last meeting. That was the number that was in the ordinance for the first reading as well. And so from the legal perspective, what's the paperwork that's going to be filed to the state, the DCD, would include that $34.7 million number. But again, we can only borrow, you can only take down the loan amount of what you reasonably expect to spend. And so that's the numbers that I had previously gone through on those prior pages, basically the 19.7 and the 1.4 million for the voting machines and for the 911 system. So although the maximum schedule is for 34.7 million, we fully expect that the amount borrowed is the 33.3 million that I went over on the prior page. Now, if we ended up, and we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, that if we ended up closing on that $33.3 million loan amount, say on November 26th, and a week later, 6 months later, you decide you're not going to pay some of the 911 system or some of the voting machines with that financing, you can pay that back immediately. And there's no prepayment to do that. So if all of a sudden you decide we want to take $500,000 from some of our other reserve money that the county may have to do that, you can do that, pay it off immediately, and of course that's going to save on the interest expense. So that's kind of the big difference between this loan and a bond issue is you can prepay it and it takes effect immediately, so you see that reduction.
So that's no prepayment penalty.
No prepayment premium, no prepayment
You would still
penalty.
be obligated for any interest over that period of time that you held the money.
Correct. That's right. Now, the good news also is the time that you're holding that money, now interest rates are changing all the time, but you're borrowing at about a 2.17%. You could be investing this money pretty close to that amount that I'm sure your administration is looking at. So you're going to, it's almost a break even as far as what you're earning versus what you're paying on that debt. So that's at a very high level, the numbers. Both Mr. Magnata and I are available to answer any questions you may have with the numbers as well as with anything that you may have, any questions you may have with the ordinance itself.
So I think there were a couple questions that were mentioned when the audience spoke. Mr. Shiner talked about the $1 million grant and what effect that would have, and I think you've covered that. Instead of 34.7, you're looking at 33.3.
That's right. Yep. And by reducing, I did just a little quick math here as we were talking, by reducing the amount borrowed by $1 million for the grant, I believe that's saving the county about $200,000 or so of interest expense. So obviously the grant was, that was excellent news when we heard that from the county manager a week or 2 ago. So that is substantial savings that grant provides.
Yeah. Okay. And
then I think the fees we had talked about as well were addressed in
yeah, you talked about the legal fees and the bond counsel fees and the financial advisor fees. Right?
Yes. Yep.
That's all included there.
That's right.
Questions for Mr. Scherer? Yes.
So are we amending the ordinance then to reflect 33.3?
Nope, the ordinance will stay as is at the 34.7. So basically what's happening is, and this is similar to the prior transactions that the county did in 2015 and 2017, where this paperwork will be filed with that amount, and then once we actually close on the loan, your bond counsel will file additional documents.
We'll reduce the size by 1.4 when we close. We'll file with DCED to ask them to reduce the authorization by 1.4.
So that will be immediately removed from the county's debt statement.
Okay, so when would that happen?
Right after we close.
Right after you close on the loan.
Like in November?
Yep,
Yeah.
end of November.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And again, that's very similar protocol to what's been done on the prior transactions as well.
And as you mentioned, there would be no fees involved there, so we wouldn't lose any
Correct.
monies at that time, right?
That's correct.
Anyone else? Questions for Mr. Scherer?
I got one.
Yes.
So you mentioned that we can return the money with no penalty.
Correct.
How long is that open for?
For the life of the loan.
Okay.
Starts immediately and goes for the life of the loan.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if we're fortunate enough to hit the lotto,
That's right.
That's why I wanted everyone to know that.
I don't think that's in the 5-year plan, is the
I wanted to make sure
law.
that was clear.
Mr. McGinley, we have some members of the firefighting and police department who'd like to speak as well.
Mr. Shear,
okay, we'll
bef-
wait
before we-
till we have Mr. Sheriff
Oh, sure.
covered.
I just wanted to reiterate one more time. So we are, based on the numbers that you've given us and everything we've talked about this meeting and the previous meeting, we are on the exact same schedule, and yet we're showing a 26% savings over what we're doing here in this process, correct?
The refunding is producing
On the refunding.
26% savings.
Right.
Yes, that's right. Extremely efficient.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to hear you say it again. Like,
Mr. Haas?
It's a job well done. That's what I mean. The rate that the county received on the proposal is very, very good. Going from basically an 8% rate to 2% rate is going to save the county a lot of money. Yep.
Mr. Haas?
Absolutely, yeah. Welcome back in, Mr. Shear, Wilkes-Barre. Again, I'm looking at page 2 of your report and about the length of the payback terms. And so nobody's disputing that is a great deal, that we're saving 26%. So very happy to hear that, obviously, and the markets have been good to us, actually, for the second time now. But I'm looking at your report, I must be confused because it says we're not extending the term of the debt, but I'm seeing here that our current debt terminates at the end of 2029, and now we've got another year and a half hanging on to that. Or are you just referring just to the old?
Yeah, I'm just referring to the refinancing component. Yes, I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. So we're not extending the debt at all in the refinancing component. That's matching the same term as the bonds and notes we're refunding. The new money component of this, that is being phased in, where most of the principal is being paid in 2029 and 2030.
Yes.
That's correct.
And I'm thinking, and I just think to be fair to the public, that we are extending the life of our debt. We are for another year and a half to about $21 million, and that's where it ends up. But I do see early on, Mr. Shear, and I think I recall this last time when we refinanced as well, we see a great yield this next year in 2020, $1.7 million, which will clearly benefit the taxpayers next year. So where is the rest of that savings absorbed? I'm seeing here a net of 3.1 million.
Right.
And obviously in years following, we're going to see a little bit more in debt service, 54 million in 2021, then upwards of 400,000 after that. You can answer that.
So how it's being absorbed, so the savings are occurring as scheduled in column 6.
Right.
As it's being proposed now. So basically about 2.2 million in 2020 and then 410,000 in 21, so on and so forth. So that's going to be the reduction in the county's debt service payments. But then in column 7, that's going to be then the addition of the new debt service payments for the new money component of this,
For
the
the new money,
911
okay.
system and the voting machine. So you see on average for the next, call it 9 or 10 years, there's an increase of about 465,000, give or take, per year. So then you basically just net those two, and that's the over in column 9, that's the difference. So for instance, let's look in 2021. So in 2021, due to the refinancing, the county is going to save 410,000 by refinancing the existing debt, but then the new debt, that debt service is 464,000, so the net impact is an increase by $54,000.
So essentially, we're just softening the impact of the new debt.
That's right.
Going forward
Yeah.
with that. Okay. I guess a question to the manager, if it's appropriate, Mr. Chair.
Sure,
too, about
absolutely.
this stuff. Because I know, Dave, we talked last week, a big issue was, I think a lot of emergency services personnel are definitely behind this, and I understand that. We want to give them the best. What definitively is the cost going to be to our municipalities? Because that is something I heard. I don't know if, and I give our people an opportunity to speak tonight. Have you been in contact with anybody on the ground that actually has to pay for the equipment, or can you speak to that?
I've been in contact with numerous municipalities. Obviously, county council received 9 letters of support from various chiefs of police. There's some
I'm sure some are here tonight.
some chiefs who are here tonight to review this. Mr. Rosencrantz had a meeting with the entire West Side COG earlier last week. Fred, you met with the West Side COG?
Yes.
Yeah, Fred, with the West Side COG, we reviewed the numbers again.
Want to come up to the
Could you
podium,
speak to that,
Mr.
Mr.
Rosencrantz?
That might be helpful.
And then,
Thanks, Fred.
Yes.
Fred, I mean, the question is really, costs to municipalities. We reviewed the radios that this provides and how much per radios that we provided. Can you talk about your meeting you just had with the West Side COG?
I think you're going to find that from the beginning, we were basing it on a formula based for the end user mobile and portable equipment for the municipalities. Due to the amount of municipalities we have and the agencies, we're not going to be able to fund 100% of the radios, end user mobile and portable equipment if an agency requires that they give out a mobile and portable to every user on the system. So some of your larger municipalities, if they have that in their collective bargaining agreement or some other type of agreement that they have with all their agencies, that cost, we can't absorb all of that. So based on the formula, we're looking at funding approximately 90% of the equipment that's on the system currently. So I think that's a huge cost savings for the municipalities and very minimal impact to all of them. Without a contract in place right now, I can't say definitively that we're going to fund this many and the municipalities are going to be on the hook for this many. I know Mike McGrady mentioned from MCM at the last meeting around 300. So right around there, if 76 municipalities have to absorb that based on the agencies spread out over 175 police, fire, and EMS agencies, I think the county is taking a very large step in funding a majority of the system and making it usable for the end users.
In addition, there's going to be our consultant, Mr. McGrady, as well as our grant writer, Michelle Sparrow, will be working with the municipalities and the firefighters grants as well. That could be an option from there. We've been also working on a private fundraising campaign. We've been contacted by numerous businesses who say that they want to contribute to their municipalities. So if I do have a situation where a municipality needs 2 or 3 radios, maybe we can reach out to those municipalities or have a fundraising drive from a local organization that would provide those radios if we need it above it. Now listen, I think that's still going to be on the smaller end, Harry. I think the larger end is we're covering almost every radio on the system. I would say, for purposes of transparency, that I was contacted by the chief of Wilkes-Barre Fire, Jay Delaney. Their contract provides 1 mobile for every firefighter, and that doesn't work with our formula. So we would have to work with the city of Wilkes-Barre very, very closely to make sure that they get what they have. I don't want to violate their collective bargaining agreement. I'm sure they don't want to do so either. But the question is, can we support them in terms of grants? Can we support other municipalities in terms of those grants? Can we reach out to the community where we need to, in addition to funding almost the entire project via the county?
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And if I heard you right, Mr. Rosencrantz, then Mr. McGrady said that of all the current equipment they have on the ground, that will be part of the contract. So we're matching the current numbers now. And if there's something extra, that's not part of the contract. Did I hear you right?
The formula that we're basing it on is based on the equipment that they have,
that they currently have.
The fire engines, the vehicles. The formula is based on the vehicles, not what their current inventory is.
Oh, okay.
And again, that could be a huge cost for the county to fund 100% of the system going out of the gate. So based on the formula, we're looking at about 90% of the equipment funded by the county. Fully usable, again, not taking into account the city of Wilkes-Barre, where they have to provide a portable radio for every firefighter.
Yes.
That's just something that we're going to have to look at on a case-by-case basis, and where we can help, we'll certainly do that. But there's only so much money that council is going to fund for this project to be able to get it on the ground and running.
Okay. No, that's helpful, because I know when we spoke last night that when you further negotiate this deal, the maximum parameters have to be in place. I think that's important to know too, to give you leverage to do what you have to do. The
Absolutely.
administrative
Yeah,
staff.
based
So-
on the amount of subscriber units
Yes.
potentially on the system,
Yes.
that reduces the cost, and you get a bigger discount based on 3,000 to 3,500 mobiles and portables. They're giving 30 to 40% discount off of state contract pricing currently. So based on the sheer volume, we're getting a very large discount, and our goal is to lock in those rates for 3 years so the municipalities can take advantage of that cost savings if they have to purchase equipment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Scherer, Mr. Rosencrantz, Mr. Magnata?
I did. Just to be clear about how this is working, page 2, the change in the net debt service. So for 2020, it'll actually benefit the budget, the proposed budget, because we're going to have to budget $1.7 million less than we would have. But the following year, that 1.7 and more comes back. And then we have 7 years of debt service that's going to be between $300,000 and $460,000 more than it would have been.
That's correct.
And an additional year of $26 million. in debt service beyond that?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there, I mean, I just want to make sure we all know what we're looking at in column 9 here.
Yeah, I think that was part of his last
Great.
presentation, too.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can I ask one more question? So-
Excuse me?
One more question, Mr. Chair? Like,
What?
going back to the Wilkes-Barre area, Mr. Pedri, or Mr. Rosecrans, how many radios does Wilkes-Barre need? Or if Chief Delaney, I don't know if I see Chief Delaney here, if he wants to address
Chief's here.
that.
John, do you have the count? I know you know these numbers like the back of your hand right now, so.
Current count for the police department, they're slated to receive 40 mobile radios and 80 portables.
Okay.
I believe they have somewhere around 90 officers, so they might be 10 short if they issue every man on the department. I don't know what their contract reads. As far as the fire department, they have 19 vehicles, so they're slated to get 19 mobiles and 58 portables. According to the survey that we did in 2015, they have 63 portables in their inventory currently, so that would leave them 5 short.
Okay. And we're talking about per unit, so what, about $3,000, I think was the
We're still
estimate?
working on that number.
That's still something.
It's a good budgetary figure.
Okay, all right,
Not exact.
thank you. Thanks for that. Thank you again.
Anyone else? Any other questions? All right, some people from the municipalities would like to speak, am I correct?
Sure. If we could start with Chief Frank Gatto from Kingston Police Fire.
The only thing I would ask is one per municipality, please. Whoever your representative is fine. And if you would give us your name and your municipality so we have it for the record, please.
My name is Chief Frank Ido, and I represent the Kingston 44th Fire Department. I have Chief Rich Kochik from the police force and Sergeant Thomas Mateg that also are with me attending today. I'm here to speak on behalf of the switching over from analog to the digital system. I think there's a lot of problems with the analog system, and I just think it's time for it to go and time to get upgraded for firefighter safety. I'm very concerned with the cost that my municipality has put out on the analog system. It's so bad that we had to purchase repeaters for the police and fire department so our system would function properly. And to be honest with you, it still doesn't. We have dead spots, and dead spots are critical to any firefighter. I really think that the system is worthwhile, and I support 911 in this completely.
Thank you.
That's really all I have. I am one of the departments that is obligated to have 31 portables for the career firefighters. So that will be an expense that the municipality is going to have to incur. If they're going to pay for 90%.
You won't have a total expense for the 31.
Yeah. It's going to cost us probably about $70,000 for 31.
In addition to what the county's going to provide?
In addition to what the counties provide. The county is set up, I believe, one in each riding position, am I correct, in the jump seats? And then the mobile radios. Yeah, 1 mobile and 4 portables in the riding position. But by the collective bargaining agreement, I'm in the same position that Chief Delaney's in, that they are obligated to have a portable radio that's issued to them by the municipality. I've spoken to my administrator, and he's fine with it. We'll make it work on our end.
Thank you.
Thank
If
you.
I could do, Mr. Cass, Chief, something too?
Sure.
Chief, welcome again, good to see you. So you talked about purchasing repeaters. So by repairing the dated equipment, it's actually costing money as well, just by keeping it functional.
Correct.
Am I hearing you on that?
Correct.
Okay.
We just had to upgrade, do some work on the fire repeater, which is on the top of the main source building. Police repeater is up at Westside Tech. But we just spent $1,000. We had some wind damage that it had to be replaced. But we're going to have to bite the bullet and just get that fixed because it's critical to us.
Okay. All right, thanks again.
Okay?
Who's going to be next?
We have Chief Jamie Merlino from Hughestown Fire.
Hi, how are you? This is Jamie Merlino, Hughestown Borough.
Thank you.
I came here to strongly support the 911 radio system. Don't want to repeat everything Chief Gatto said, but our town's a square mile big. We have outages, documented outages. We have problems getting into certain buildings in my small town. And if it happens in Hughestown, it's going to happen all over the county. So we strongly support the change to digital. As far as the formula goes, as far as portable radios and mobiles, it fits my department perfectly. It's a great system. We're very happy with how everything went. The meetings, the whole process up to this point with the 911 center has been fantastic. But to take on this expense, either my agency alone or my municipality would not be able to budget something like this. But I just cannot stress how important this upgrade is to public safety in the entire county, not just Hughestown Borough.
Thank you. Who's next?
Next, we have Chief Donald Leschko from Hazleton Fire.
Good evening. I'm the Fire Chief, Donald Leschko, for the City of Hazleton, and I'm here tonight in support of this county 911 upgrade. Firefighter safety is a most pivotal item that we can rely on. Our safety, I cannot ask you enough to move forward with this project. Especially in the southern end of the county, we rely on one frequency. When you have a major incident and you have to get pushed off to a different frequency, we have no communication with the county. When you're relying on one frequency for so many departments in the southern end of the county, this upgrade is desperately needed. And I can't implore you enough to vote in favor of this, because I never want to have to go to a door to tell a loved one that their family or their brother firefighter was lost, because every NIOSH report you read, the one of the major most causes is radio communication. And the process from the start with Fred and his entire staff in this process with us has been just tremendous. We've been involved in it from day one, from step one with MCM, and I am very, very happy with the ratio broken down to radios, from mobiles, the portables. With the City of Hazleton, we all know we're in distress status. We should be very fine with the ratio of portables in the fire department and mobiles to accommodate us. So again, I implore you and hope you to continue this process on to make this a fruition to come to reality. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that's all the individuals who asked to speak so far. With us as well, though, in the support will be Chief Joel Stepanski from Freeland Fire, as well, Chief Mudlock from Jenkins Township Fire, Chief Kochek from Kingston PD, and Sergeant McTague from Kingston Police Department are in the back there, as well as you heard from Chief Zasfran from Pittston EMS at the last meeting as well.
At the last meeting, yep. Anyone else? Thank you. Any other questions, comments? We have a motion to approve the ordinance as presented by Mr. Snee, second by Mr. Bilbo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hout?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman? Yes. Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
And thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for coming out tonight and showing your support. I think it's a very necessary process that we have to go through in order to improve our service to your citizens out there and your fire people who have a very dangerous job every day, and we appreciate your efforts. Thank you. Moving down to number 2, we have a motion to adopt a resolution requesting a Keystone Communities Program grant, Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, and this is the grant that was, thank you. This is the grant that we spoke about, we spoke about, but the announcement was made last week of $1 million. As to the efforts of our legislative delegation at the state level and also our lobbyist group that we had hired earlier this year. Do we have a motion? Ms. Wakus?
Second.
Mr. Bilbo? On the question?
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
On the looking at this, ladies and gentlemen, I was thrilled to receive the word from DCD last week regarding this $1 million. This is a major win for the county. I want to thank each and every state legislator from Luzerne County who worked in a bipartisan effort to get us this. That's every state senator and every state representative. Every single one of them made sure that this was coming to Luzerne County. So I want to thank each and every state legislature. Too often in this room do we say, hey, listen, the state passes along this, the state passes along that, and believe me, they do. But in this case, they really, really stepped up and they helped us with this. I also want to specifically thank Maverick Strategies for their coordination of this effort as well. That was an effort that we put forth through this council that has paid off, and it's paid off quite a bit. So I want to thank every state legislator for what they've done here as well. So this would be a vote for county council. As soon as if council approves this, then we can move forward with actually receiving the money, and then we move forward from that process.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hout?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman? Yes. Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Public comment? Mr. McCabe?
Yeah, a couple of months ago, I have a question for Dave. Dave, whatever happened to the situation with the state grant? Did you do any homework on it, or are we going to get a state grant on fixing roads again?
On fixing roads?
Yeah, you know how we got a state
Mr.
grant
McCabe.
and we put the, what?
Would you please, whatever comments you want to make, fine, and then the manager will
Well, I'm
answer your
addressing them, and I have a couple other ones.
Well, would you bring those up first, and then we'll
Okay.
answer all your questions? Please.
Okay, well, I did. You don't jump on anybody else. I don't
No,
like
no,
to be
that's
jumped
why,
on.
that's why we'd like, we want to give you your 3 minutes, we don't want to interrupt you.
Okay. How about the unemployment rate? Today in today's paper, for the last couple of months, I noticed that today there was 17 people left the workforce in the Luzerne County. Is there anything going on that so many people is leaving the workforce? That's a question too.
Okay, and the manager will address that also.
Yeah, I noticed the last couple of weeks, it was in the paper that we're gonna rent so many parking spots for employees in the county. Well, you guys weren't here a couple of years ago. Mr. Urban was here. They had a parking lot right up on top here, and they got rid of it, and they sold it to King's College. We have if you ever parked in the second parkade here, it's empty all the time. You know, I don't know who owns that, but it's a consideration rather than pay $45,000 and $50,000 a year that was in the paper for parking for the people. That's all my questions.
Okay, let's start with number one.
We're applying for numerous road grants, Mr. McCabe. The most recent one was a multimodal grant that we applied for. We were very successful in getting some of these multimodals. Bicel's Road in Butler Township, adding the bike lane, getting taken care of that was a process. We just received $150,000 for the Hanover Industrial Park from the state regarding adding bus shelters and bus lanes so people can get to work better in that location. We have another grant coming up. I want to say the end of this month. I was working on with the engineers, and now we're looking to go into the Crestwood Industrial Park. Once again, a county road that we've been able to utilize. As for the unemployment rate,
I think it's not unemployment rate. I think he was talking about is the number of employees that left the county.
Sure. We had 17
Correct?
people. 17 people who left the county last month. I mean, we have a 1,500 person workforce. So.
No, the one guy I noticed, I know him personally, he was here 15, 20 years. He was with 911, and he left the system. Doesn't make sense for a person to be here that long, unless I know he's not old enough to retire, but unless you can prove me wrong.
You got to talk to him about why that individual specifically left. I don't.
No, but every month, Dave, it seems like I've been noticing the last couple of months, high people leaving the workforce, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's high, Mr. McCabe. Also, we've been doing a bunch of hirings as well that we've been able to move forward with. We just hired 6 new corrections officers as well, though, that hopefully will just start October 15th. Mr. Rakovich is thrilled about trying to finally get a workforce up to space where we have 1,500 employees, over 32 separate departments, over an area the size of Rhode Island. It's a large workforce that we work with, and some people move on from different locations. With regard to the parking spots, we never sold that lot to King's. King's leases it from us.
Is there any reason why you're leasing when you need parking spaces?
You'd have to ask the commissioners who signed that lease.
You weren't here at the time. Steve would have been able to answer it if he was here.
I'm not sure. The commissioners signed a lease with King's where they would.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. What's it, 45,000? Genetti's offered
Well, that'll be part of the budget process too, Mr. McCabe. That'll be an item that will be discussed during the budget. The cost for that, the parking.
Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Griffith?
I have a couple of things I want to address. I went to the Bureau of Elections meeting the other day, at the beginning, I guess it was in the middle of last week. And I tried to stress to the Bureau of Elections that they're the ones that pick the election machines, not the council and not the manager. According to state law, they're the ones that are responsible to choose the machine. Council approves funding, the manager certainly has input. But it is, at the end of the day, it is the Bureau of Elections' choice what machines we get, not the councils and not the managers. what was really interesting at the meeting that was revealed is two people that were on the committee is the Republican leader of the county and the Democratic leader of the county, and neither one of them showed up to any of the meetings. It's really interesting. Yet those folks will be the first ones to complain when the tally's not correct or there's a problem with the machine. I find it very distressing that we can't get the two leaders of the parties to come to at least to the meeting to put input in on their selection for the voting machines or try them out. That's the other thing that was very interesting was that Mr. Piazza turned in his resume at that meeting. I sent an email to all members of council and the manager about that. Our charter is clear that their hiring process cannot reveal the person who's applying for a job in the county. Yet he was bold enough to walk up to all members of the election board and hand them his resume. Can the other 7 do the same? I think we should send out an email to all 7 of them now and tell them to turn in their resume as well. So it's an even playing field. I don't think that's fair. I think it should be rejected. His application should be rejected and his resume should be taken out of hand. He violated the charter and he violated the personnel code. On budget transfers, I was looking at budget transfers on September the 7th. There was $113,000 transferred for the ADAs in the district attorney's office to eliminate 6 union positions. I don't know if you could do that. They have a collective bargaining agreement. Are we going to have a lawsuit on that collective bargaining agreement from the union that says that they clearly have an issue, that we eliminated 6 of their positions? And it was really interesting when I spoke to them, they had no idea that that even happened. How that transpired, I don't know. What's the fee? Mr. Scheer from PFM and the bond counsel sat here. You asked them a question and they did not answer it. You asked them what their fee was. They said it's covered in the bond transfer.
No, they didn't.
Is there a fee in there, how much we're
Yes,
paying
there
them?
is.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, see, we didn't get that
It's
paper.
identified in this, the legal fees are estimated at $70,000, the financial advisor is estimated at $75,000.
Okay, see, we don't get that stuff because that's not posted online.
Certainly can have this.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice to be posted online before the meeting so we'd all
I
have
didn't
it.
bring this in.
Well, it should be posted online. It's part of the agenda.
That's no problem. We
Okay,
can do
so if
very
that would
easily.
that would be helpful, so then I wouldn't have to ask that question. I'd be able to read it. Okay? And lastly, I think I have one more. Let me just check and see what's. Oh, the tax increase, I appreciate the fact that Linda brought up the fact that that borrowing is not free. So I would certainly hope that this council will sit and think about ways that we can lower taxes or at least stop increasing spending so we can pay for the additional borrowing that we just had. We don't dispute the fact that we need a 911 system, but I don't think the taxpayers can afford it. Thank you.
Mr. Shiner? Don't break the equipment, we'll be in trouble.
Don't tell Rick Morelli. Mr. McCabe asked the question about the grant money coming through, but I'd also like to know how much money is coming through, if any, from the $5 vehicle fee that was imposed in matching funds. That question hasn't been answered, and if any of the money has come through or not.
Is Mr. Sweats back there? Can't see his head. Mr. O'Neill?
Mr. O'Neill had the number. Did
You have a number, Mr. O'Neill?
I don't have an exact number. No, I don't. We did get one payment in December.
Okay, would you please forward that, and then we'll make sure that.
Did we get any
that's-
of the matching money yet?
The matching funds are determined over the course of multiple years.
Multiple, okay.
So we did not receive any of the matching funds. That's sent through reimbursement. I'll provide that in email as well.
Thank you. Also, if we've received a $1 million grant, I appreciate the consultants saying that they're going to pull the full $34.7 million. But if you close at 34.7 and then turn around and say to the bank, well, here's $1 million back, isn't that going to cost us money?
I thought Mr. Shiner, he said that they would provide additional documents in the DCED and reduce that number from 34.7 to 33.3.
Closing.
After closing.
After closing.
That was stated. I don't know if you caught it.
I heard after, it was hard to understand what he was saying
Yeah.
because he didn't have a microphone,
Yeah,
but
so
I
it's a
heard
difference
after
of about
closing.
$1.4 million
So we're-
between what was the 34.7 and the 33.
So we're not going to take the 34.7 from the bank?
No.
At
We
closing?
will have closing, and then those documents will supersede and bring it down to
Okay,
33.
so we won't owe any interest on that extra million, even though it's only a short time?
We're only going
Okay.
to borrow the money we actually need.
We actually need?
Right.
Okay.
I thought Ms. Houck made that clear with her question earlier.
All right, thank you. There's a typo in the schedule for your meetings. And the typo is for the October 15 meeting, and it says there'll be introduction of the fiscal year 2020 budget. It should be budgets, plural. There are several budgets that have to be introduced next week. And you can find that in Article 5 of our charter, under Budget and Finance, where it discusses that on or before October 15th of each year, the manager shall submit to County Council the proposed county budgets for the ensuing fiscal year. It also reflects in the budgets the administrative code, which says there will be a position budget in the same format. Now, I know there's been a lot of discussion at the Code Review Committee and over the past year or so over whether it should be called a position budget or a position something. But it's not a position list. And the law of this county requires that a position budget in the same format as the other budgets is introduced. And I sincerely hope that this year the county manager and his staff comply with what the charter, the administrative code require. They're the laws of this county. And there's nowhere in the charter or any of our codes that says anything about a position list. So I look forward to seeing the presentation next week, and I look forward to seeing everyone being in compliance with the laws of this county. Thank you.
Mr. Rabo?
While Mr. Abel is going up, can I just address one thing, Mr. McGinley? Brian, when we submit next week's budget, there will be a document that lists every county employee. You can call it what you like, but it will have the past 2 years of those salaries as well as eliminated positions. It'll be everything that all your hopes and dreams ever believe in. Thanks. I'll call it a position list. You can call it.
I'll hold that in abeyance about that asking for more. Mr. Rabo, it's your turn.
Thank you. I first of all wanted to end the previous statement I made in the public comment at the beginning of the meeting about the RACB grant. There's $2.5 million that was awarded to, for the Altamont building, but Luzerne County Industrial Development Authority was the signator of that grant for the $2.5 million for the Altamont building for the restoration. So I think since that money was going towards a developer that could no longer fulfill that obligation, I think that money, that $2.5 million that's still held up by the governor's budget office, which was awarded, and since the Luzerne County Industrial Development Authority applied for it, I think it would be a great idea to have the $2.5 million go in towards the 911. Since it's a capital project, and I think that it was intended for a capital project, I think, and it would help alleviate the payment for the Hazleton City and even the surrounding area of Hazleton. I think that it would be good use to go for that $2.5 million to go towards that. So just a suggestion for Mr. Pedri and for, so he could look into it with, I told him about it for the past couple of years. I would ask for a request from this council. Over the weekend, my mentor and friend, Grace Kuzo, who was Hazleton City Councilwoman, passed away from cancer, and she was a public servant in every sense of the words. She never asked of anything for herself. She only asked for her community and for this county to work efficiently and for the people. She took me under her wing, showed me how good government is supposed to work and how to follow, as Mr. Shiner said, the laws of the county and of the state. And I think, and also she was a trailblazer. She took, she told women, she encouraged them to run for office and to apply for board positions, and participate in local government. So I would ask the council to make a ceremonial proclamation in the name of Grace Kuzo, and make it, if you can, for the meeting down in Hazleton, for her daughter to accept it. And it's been an incredibly trying time and difficult time for myself and for the people of the city of Hazleton. I think a lot of the people that some of the council members and other people who knew her would, agree with this, that she was for accountability through and through. She knew what the word meant, and she held that word. So I would ask also, Mr. Chairman, if you could close out the meeting with a moment of silence in her name, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience who would like to address the council on non-agenda items? Well, you were scheduled for the work session, Ms. Davies, and that's where we're going to discuss the voting machines. Is that all right? No. Okay. Anyone else? Council?
If I could, Chairman McGinley, I just wanted to give a quick update for council and for the public about something that we discussed here previous meetings. I'm kind of excited to report about that voter initiative with the young people across the county here. I did reach out to all the public high schools in Luzerne County, and had some really great contacts with both their principals, their teachers, and in some schools the students themselves. I've spoken personally with people in places like Hazleton, Coughlin, Pittston area, Northwest area, Wyoming Valley West, Lake Lehman. I was fortunate to be at Dallas High School for a voter registration drive with their seniors, and I was joined there by Senator Baker as well as Representative Boback. So it's going very well, and I'm happy to report to see that the people that are eligible in this county, these new 18-year-olds or ones that are going to be 18 gotten a very good response. So we're working on that next generation of people to have them be active participants and involved. Democracy is so important. I just wanted to bring that to council's attention, that our young people out there in our high schools across the county, they do want to be active, they do want to play a part, and I saw it firsthand. So thank you, Mr. McGinley.
Thank you. Ms. Saitman.
Yeah, maybe this should stay till the end of the meeting, but I wanted to say that the gentleman that was here last week that talked about the juvenile justice program
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Some of the pictures are still out there, the photos. It's going to be up to the 17th. But the presentation by this gentleman was so moving, especially when you think of Luzerne County and juvenile justice, even though we weren't in any way involved in those pictures or anything. But he was marvelous, and Mr. Petrie did a great job in terms of introducing them and explaining it. On also the expo that took place at the Woodlands.
Yeah, the day after our meeting.
Yes, it was unbelievable. You couldn't even get a place in the Woodlands parking lot. They were sending them to other places. And there were agencies there that had to be told to come back, like they had to split the agencies. So some could be there from 9 to 12 and some could be 1 to 4. And I just can't imagine how much work that is to put together. And she deserves a lot of credit.
That was our human services department. I agree. I was up there that next day, and the crowd was
unbelievable.
Mr. Chair, so was I.
Yes.
It was outstanding. Lynn Hill and her staff was
did a great
just
job.
Outstanding. Great job. Great job.
Very positive things. Nice to hear. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
In memory of Grace Kuzo, like Mr. Ramos suggested?
Absolutely. Mr. Haas, we want to make a motion of adjournment in the name of Grace Kuzo? That's correct? we have a second to that?
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Snee?
Second.
And Mr. Morelli is also a second. We'll put him in there so he has his name in. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
We will begin the voting session at 7:15. I'll give everybody a minute to stretch their legs and we'll begin the work session, I should say.